Hit it, Phil.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Can it be the breeze that fills the trees with rare and magic perfume? Oh, no, it isn't the breeze. It's Jackson time. La-da-da-da.
Stay tuned.
Right after this episode.
For our discussion.
The Jack Benny Program.
Pauline. Oh, Pauline. Yes, Miss Livingston? Have you seen my emery boards? Oh, yes. I put them here in this drawer. Here's one. Thank you. You know, Miss Livingston, it's funny, isn't it? Years ago, you and I used to work side by side at the May Company. And now you're in television, working for a big star like Jack Benny. And I'm your maid. Yeah. Can you lend me $5 till payday? Yeah, that's 10 you owe me. Oh, by the way, Pauline, I'm going out, so you can have the rest of the day off. Oh, good. Then I can spend the afternoon with my boyfriend, Sidney. You met him? Yes, but, Pauline, you know, this is none of my business, but isn't Sidney a little too old for you? Well, he is a little old, but he's very nice. I feel so sorry for him. You know, he's having such trouble with his teeth. Well, why? Do they ache? He wished they could. You mean they... Yes, and it's so embarrassing the way they keep clicking. What? Miss Livingston, they click something awful. When he walks into an office building, all the elevators go up. You sure you won't need me this afternoon? No, I'm positive. Mr. Benny's picking me up and we're going out to 20th Century Fox. The movie studio? Yes, you see, last week they decided to make the picture all about the life story of Jack Benny. Gosh, Miss Livingston, imagine. Big studio like that. I'll bet Mr. Benny is really proud. Proud? Well, let's say that he's taking it just the way I thought he would. He's, what's the word? Unbearable? That's it.
Good morning, Rochester.
Good morning, boss.
Is my breakfast ready?
It's in the kitchen. I've been keeping it warm.
Splendid. Splendid. By the way, Rochester, I want to compliment you the way you prepared my bath. The fragrance was delightful, and the bubbles seemed to be quite lively.
Thank goodness I finally found the right formula. I've tried hard water, soft water, cool water, hot water, all kinds of water, trying to keep those bubbles bubbling.
Now, what'd you use today?
Schweppes.
Good, good. Now, will you bring me my breakfast, please?
Yes, sir. Would you like to look at the paper?
Oh, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Rochester.
Will you take off those glasses, or shall I turn on the lights?
Well, if there's anything in here about the studio making the story of my life. Nothing here, the front page. Nothing in this column. Nothing in this column. Oh, here it is. After years of success in other fields of show business, Jack Benny will soon be celebrating his triumphal return to the silver screen. This epic will not only be based on the story of his life, but his brilliant career in... What am I reading this for? This is the ad I took out. Well, you like that? They had to put it in the used car section.
Here's your breakfast, boss.
Fine, fine.
It's just like you ordered.
Splendid. Well, kumquat glacé, eggs Benedict, and broiled New England kippers. Very good. Rochester, where's the cafe au lait?
The what?
The coffee. Rochester, you forgot my toast.
Honey!
Rochester, toast on a flaming sword?
I always say if we're going to be classy, let's go all out.
That's ridiculous. Buying a sword just to serve toast.
It comes in handy. Every month I duel the baker for the bill.
Now stop making things up.
Hello, Rochester.
Well, Mr. Wilson, come on in.
Hi, Don.
Oh, congratulations, Jack. I think it's just wonderful. They're going to make a picture of your life.
Yeah, it is exciting. How'd you find out about it?
Well, just this morning, I was looking through the paper for a used car, and there it was.
I know. Would you like something to eat?
No, thanks, Jack. I've had lunch. You go right ahead anyway.
Okay.
You know, Jack, there's one thing that bothers me about Fox making a story of your life.
What's that?
Well, I've seen a lot of these biographical films, and they've got a lot of action, excitement, adventure.
Don, are you kidding? Why, my life has been one adventure after another. Ever since I ran away from home to face life all by myself.
Well, I didn't know that. How old were you?
32.
I was 22. I remember because I wouldn't leave until I finished high school. 32.
Well, anyway, Jack, I'm awfully happy that they're going to make your life story into a picture. Is it all set?
Well, there are a few details that have to be ironed out. You know, this afternoon I'm going over to 20th Century Fox to talk to Mr. Buddy Adler. He's the executive producer, you see, and I'm taking Mary with me, you know.
Hey, Jack, you're not going to let all that good food go to waste.
Yeah, I can't eat anymore. I'm too excited, you know. Where's that used car section? I'll get it. Who are you? I'm the baker. Rochester wasn't kidding. 2
loaves of white, 1 rye, and an apple pie. My God!
This isn't the first of the month yet.
Where is he? Where is he? Where is he?
He's gone already. Now, Rochester, take off that silly outfit and let's get started for the studio. Here.
Yes, sir.
Gee, the studio lot is crowded today. Oh, there's a parking place right up ahead, Rochester.
Say, that sounded like gunshots.
Yeah, they must be making a cowboy picture.
Somebody there told me this ain't the stagecoach. That last one went through the radiator.
It's that parking attendant.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm going over and talk to him. Hey, what's the idea of shooting at us?
You took the space reserved for Mr. Adler.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'm Jack Benny, and I have an appointment.
Jack Benny?
Yeah.
The one that starred in The Horn Blows at Midnight?
Yes, I made that picture for Warner Brothers years ago. Did you see it?
See it? I directed it.
Why, I did... Herman! I didn't recognize you. You got thin.
Yeah, thin.
But I can't understand it. I mean, you were doing so well. How come you're now a parking lot attendant?
How come?
Yeah.
All my life I wanted to be a director. For years I studied and starved trying to learn the profession. Every little job they put me on, I did with perfection. Finally, they noticed me. I became an assistant director. I was on my way up. Suddenly, I was a director. Everything I did was right. I was turning out hit after hit. I had money. I had respect. I even won an Oscar. And then you came along. You and that lousy Horn Blows at Midnight.
Herman, take it easy.
Why did you have to come into my life? I used to direct pictures. Now I'm directing traffic.
Herman, put down that gun.
What do you care? I'm pointing it at myself.
Gee, he's a complete wreck.
Jack, what was that?
It's nothing. Nothing. Mary, come on, we better not keep Mr. Adler waiting. Oh, Rochester, you stay here till we get back.
I have to. I've got my finger in the dike.
I beg your pardon, but I have an appointment with Mr. Adler. I'm Jack Benny.
Oh, yes, Mr. Benny. He's in conference. Would you mind waiting?
No, not at all. Thank you. I ought to be in pictures. I'm wonderful to see.
Say, Jack, isn't that Van Johnson sitting over there?
Oh, yeah. Gee, used to be such a nice guy.
Used to be. What did he ever do to you?
What did he do to me? Do you see his last 3 pictures?
Yeah, and he was great in all of them. What about it?
What about it? Who has 3 hits in a row? What's he trying to do, show up Kirk Douglas and William Holden and the rest of us?
Oh, brother.
Look at him sitting there so nonchalantly reading a magazine. That expression on his face, loaded with confidence.
And not a wrinkle.
How would you know? His freckles would cover anything. The size of those freckles, the big show-off.
You know, Jack, I can't understand it. Every time somebody makes a little progress, you get sore at them.
I do not.
You do, too. When Lassie got her own television show, you got so mad you're bitter.
Bitter. I snarled at her once, and you're making a big thing out of it. Anyway, this is different. I practically gave Van Johnson his start. I remember when he came to me for advice, and I was fool enough to...
Shh. Jack, he's coming over.
Yeah, well, I'll hide my feelings.
Jack, Mary.
Hello, Van.
How are you, Jack?
Fine, fine. How's your mother?
Oh, she's fine, thanks.
And your father?
Oh, he's fine, too.
Well, the next time you see him, tell him they've got a louse for a son.
Jack.
Well,
Jack, what's the matter? What happened? I thought you liked me. I thought we were friends.
friends. Lot you know about friendship. Spreading that rumor around about being a big box office attraction.
Jack, I didn't start any rumor. I will admit the columnist have been saying some nice things about me, but then I saw something nice about you in the paper this morning.
That I paid for.
I don't know what to say. Oh, I'm sorry I had such good parts in pictures.
I'll bet. I suppose they had to twist your arm to sign that new contract.
Mary, what's the matter with him?
Oh, he's jealous of anyone that's a big success. If they happen to have blue eyes, he thinks they're copying him.
Don't be ridiculous.
Gosh, Jack, I wouldn't hurt you for the world. I know how you love show business. I wouldn't do anything to make you unhappy. Honestly, Jack, you've always been my idol. Well, I think you're the greatest personality in show business.
You do?
I think you're really swell.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry I said the things I did about you, Van. I think you're pretty swell, too.
Jack.
Yeah, but you're sweller than I am.
No, you're the swellest.
Van.
No, you're the swellest.
Well,
As soon as the swelling goes down, can I get a word in here?
I'm sorry, Mary. But see, you were just carried away. You know.
Oh, Mr. Benny, Mr. Adler will see you now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, so long, Van.
So long, Jack.
Goodbye, Van.
Bye, Mary.
He's a nice kid. Hi, Mr. Adler. Hi, Mary.
Hello, Mr. Adler.
Hi, nice to see you. Thank you. Good to see you, too. Sit down. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I'll pull up a chair for myself.
Excuse me. Well, you know, Mr. Adler, I was quite elated when I found out about the idea about your studio making the story of my life. As a matter of fact, knowing that we were going to be here, I was thrilled and excited from the moment I got up this morning.
I noticed that when you walked in.
Huh?
You have your socks on over your shoes.
Mary, why didn't you tell me?
I thought you got a shoe shine and were saving it.
Getting back to your picture, Jack, we have everything laid out. We're going to start with the day you were born. Then we're going to trace your entire career and include everyone that had a part in it.
Uh-huh.
From the shopkeeper who sold you your first violin and the kindly old vaudevillian who gave you the idea of telling jokes on the stage, and everyone whose advice and encouragement have kept you before the public.
Well,
naturally, we'll change the names to protect the innocent.
naturally. Now, Mr. Adler, I notice you left out a few details. I mean, it's about my life, but then I'll throw them in when I direct it.
When you what?
Direct it. I'm going to direct the picture and write it.
You're going to direct the picture and write it?
Yes, sir.
Who's going to supervise it?
I am.
Who's going to produce it?
I am.
Who's going to finance it?
Suddenly, this place became a library.
Mary, please. Now, look, Jack, we've been making pictures for a long time, and you're not going to tell us how to run our business.
But look at Mr. Adler.
Now, get this. We're going to make a picture called The Life of Jack Benny, and you're not going to direct it.
I'm not?
No, you're not going to direct it, write it, produce it, or supervise it.
Well, I guess you're right, Mr. Adler. I should be satisfied just starring in it.
Jack. That's what I wanted to talk to you about.
Well, we're back in the library again.
What did you want to talk to me about, Mr. Adler?
Well, we feel that somebody else ought to play the part of Jack Benny.
Well, for heaven's sakes, what's the matter with me?
Well, you've been Jack Benny too long.
Well, Mr. Adler, if you don't think I'm capable of playing myself in my life story, who did you have in mind?
Miss Dutton, send in Van Johnson.
Van Johnson?
Put your socks on.
Hello, Mr. Adler.
Nice to see you, Van. Jack, you know...
I know him. Van, you knew about this all the time, didn't you?
Well, about what?
Van, I asked you to drop in because I wanted you to play the part of Jack Benny in his life story.
Oh, that's wonderful. I idolize him.
Some idolizing. I can't imagine the story of my life without my being in it.
Jack, I didn't say you weren't going to be in it. I have something very important for you.
You have?
Yes, you're going to play the part of your father.
I'm going to play my own father?
Yes. Van Johnson will be your son, and I think Mary will be excellent in the part of Van's sweetheart.
So do I.
You keep out.
Yeah, that's right. We can get married as soon as I ask my father.
Now cut that out. Now look, if this is your idea of making the story of my life, you can drop the whole thing.
All right, then we won't make it.
Don't be so hasty. What's bothering you?
You're bothering me. I'm sick of it. And we're not going to make the life story of Jack Benny.
All right, then don't make it. But let me tell you something, Mr. Warner.
It's not Warner, it's Adler.
It's a natural mistake. He's used to being hollered at by Jack Warner.
Well, I've had enough of this. Come on, Mary, let's go.
Goodbye, Mr. Adler. Bye, Van.
Bye, Mary. Well, there goes my idol. What are you going to do now, Mr. Adler?
Well, I don't feel too bad about it. After all, it's tough to do a story of a man who's living. People know him too well. And it's, Hey, maybe Herman got him. Now we can do his life. Miss Burton, get the script department. We're going to change the ending. Van, you'll be here tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock for rehearsals.
Yes, sir.
You!
I forgot my socks.
He's alive.
How do you like that? Miss Dutton, cancel the Jack Benny story and fire Herman. Man, it's things like this that made me great.
With hair, it's all right. With freckles, it's murder.
So long, Van.
The nerve of that Buddy Adler. Well, I don't need him or 20th Century Fox or anybody. I'll produce the picture myself, and I'll star in it, too, and it'll be great.
Is it going to be a partner for me, boss?
It certainly is, Rochester, because this is going to be a true story. And, Mary, you're going to be in it, too.
When do we start making it?
I don't know. Ask my director.
Hey, I got an idea. We'll make your life story a Western.
Garland, put that away. Good night, folks.
This is Buck Benny speaking. We have Terry Phillips with us. Hey, Terry.
Hiya.
We have Zach Eastman with us.
Hello.
Well, Zach. We have Kathy Fuller-Seeley.
Hey, hook 'em.
Yeah. So we are doing a filmed episode of the Jack Benny Show. This is one of those, it's sitcom in nature. It doesn't have him in front of the curtain or anything like that. And we'll just go around and chat about it. I will give it my, I enjoyed it because it wasn't what I was expecting it to be, I guess, is part of it. Because when it said Jack's life story, I thought, oh, is that the one where he gets the little kid to play his part again and everything? And it wasn't that. It was different. So I was like, okay. And it does have Mary in it, which I always perk up when I see Mary. And parts of it worked for me and parts of it maybe didn't. But we shall go around and see about this. So let's start with Kathy. Kathy, what stood out to you, both positive and negative?
All right, I'll give you a positive.
Yes.
I loved Mel Blanc. This was a new addition to an old story. The gonna make us a movie of Jack's life.
Yes.
Has been happening since 1945,
Right.
if not before, on the radio. So this is old news. And yet, in previous versions, there's usually something a little bit more about it, as in who actually they're going to cast for the characters or what the plot might be.
Right.
We don't get to any of that this time, but the ad is indeed Mel Blanc is a sad sack, a marvelous in-joke that he's the parking lot attendant who used to be a director at Fox.
Yes.
Or well, although The Horn Blows at Midnight was made at Warner's, but here they are at Fox. But nevertheless.
Well, Warner's kicked him so far out he had to be that security guard over at Fox.
Over the canyon to Fox. So.
The bit has been done on radio, but I don't remember if it's strictly tied to this storyline. But there's a faster version of Mel doing it. I don't remember which year, but it's more angry in terms of Mel's performance in it. But including and weaving it into this one is definitely a needed
Well, and it becomes
feature.
a bizarre kind of tip of the hat to the Christmas episode
Yeah.
that people have seen so many times that I think this will have some resonance because they'll be like, oh, that's Mel essentially playing the character that's it's almost the same feel to it as the Christmas episode where Jack drives him crazy. And this one, he kind of drives himself crazy talking about Jack and what is Jack's negative impact on his life. But
the difference is he doesn't shoot himself; he tries to shoot Jack.
Exactly. Yes.
It's not needed, but I would have loved the extra little tidbit that's Raoul Walsh, because that's who directed Horn Blows at Midnight.
What a patch over his.
Yeah.
You know.
If Mel Blanc had worn an eye patch and played Raoul Walsh, my geekdom would be satisfied.
Buck, I would say one other thing that I appreciate is this is one of the most natural performances by Mary Livingston that we're ever going to get for someone who, as far as we've been told, was getting terribly mic shy and camera shy. That her performances, that's on radio, just seemed so. I feel for her. That she's really not having a good time. She looks like she's having a good time in this episode. She's really just being herself. And like I said, that was worth appreciating.
Well, she was also the voice of reason in this episode. She was the calm one, the one who was, kind of holding it all together. Everybody else was nuts.
Yeah.
Yep.
And she always has, in the radio show, they always played it that she had a thing for the Vans, both Johnson and Heflin. So it's interesting having one of them on here. And I don't know, maybe she did and so maybe that put her at ease too.
Now, mind you, that had started back in the late 40s. See here.
Yes, Kathy, I agree with that entirely. We got blocked out of the last part of that, Kathy. Why don't you repeat the last part of what you were saying?
Oh, well, Van Johnson had first started as his character as himself on the Jack Benny radio show in the late 40s as this handsome young ingenue man, and here he is 10 years later still being put into that role.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then Zach, what stood out for you on this one?
So I'm sort of torn because on the one hand, I do love the storylines involving Jack's film career, especially how they tie in, or more appropriately, don't really tie in to the actual film output he created. But from a filmmaking standpoint, and we have to look at this as filmmaking because this is what these film shows are. I feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities and needless coverage. I'm not the person who came up with this. I believe this is Stephen Weiner on his Criterion essay for To Be or Not to Be. But comedy is only good in a medium wide or a wide. It's not good with reaction shots. It's not good with close-ups. You're losing interactivity, and Jack needs to interact with people. And there's too many inserts or cutaways to singles. And it's very evident in the beginning, not just with Jack and Rochester, but with Mary and Pauline. And I think that unfortunately, because they're doing that for coverage and maybe trying to fill up a gap where a laugh might go or not go, it plays off as very uneven. But what's interesting about it is that there is still room for the chaotic anarchy that could happen in a Benny world. Not too long ago, we were discussing the supermarket episode where they're allowed to let that anarchy reign. The whole bit with the bread delivery and the fencing was the most kinetic this episode truly gets for me in terms of like fulfilling the promise of what you see in your head when you're listening to Jack's radio show.
But that's my problem. It didn't fulfill my promise. I wanted to see Eddie fight the bread guy, because they both had swords and they're both on other sides of the door. Open the door and
right. But what is brilliant about that, though, regardless of not getting that fight that I would want as well, is you do get to see Rochester Eddie's just bolting through that set. Yes. And that is an example of how beautiful it can be. But to bring back to Kathy's bit about Mel Blanc in there, the editing in it does something that I liked in the supermarket episode, but didn't like here, which is they're doing the bit with Mel as Herman, the quote unquote director of Hornbows at Midnight. And when they get to the bit that I already know the line for line, which is Herman, put down that gun. What do you care? I'm pointing it at myself. Right. Which for anybody who is watching that might be a trigger. Like there's a lot of suicide humor in this era for some reason.
Yes.
So watch with discretion. But that bit, they cut away to Rochester and Mary so as not to spoil the revelation. It's a radio gag because you have to imagine the gun going toward Herman,
right,
on him, on putting it on himself. It doesn't work if you're trying to visualize that bit, but as a result, in trying to preserve the joke, you sacrifice logical editing and it becomes very, very awkward. Yes. And the way Jack enters that medium wide to come into it, it's almost like he's acting in a movie where something very disturbing has happened. The way he enters the scene after everything's been done it's great for an awkward dramedy, or it's great for maybe even a Wes Anderson kind of reaction, but it doesn't work here. I will say though, like as much as I like Van Johnson in here though, I'm predisposed to enjoy this sketch when it's done by Danny Kaye. And I'm not a big Danny Kaye guy, but Danny Kaye is undeniably brilliant in those sketches. And I feel like this one's fine. It's not my preference. Van Johnson, I have no problem with Van Johnson. I just think that you need Danny Kaye's energy for that sketch to work, right, because one of the things they bring into the original bit is the way he was doing all that like sped up double talk. And then it's not the same. So I feel like there's small little treasures inside of a very rough mine that you have to really pick through, like like you're washing out for gold in the pan, so to speak.
Well, and I think like you're saying, I think you're spot on with the Danny Kaye piece, because what this does is you get Jack mad at somebody,
Mm-hmm.
which you virtually never get. So you're in a weird place to begin with.
Yeah.
And what saves it on with Danny Kaye is that Danny Kaye does, like you say, the double talk. It makes it funny, and it makes the whole thing pay off
Mm-hmm.
without having that topper bit of him doing that. You start to feel uh, empathy or whatever for Van, and be like, oh my gosh, Jack is being really harsh to Van. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not where we're supposed to go. We're supposed to think it's funny. And so it doesn't quite work, doesn't land as well.
It doesn't, but I mean, I will say it's not completely, like, it's not filled with loss. It's just
No, agreed.
There's just missed opportunity there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for the modern audience, honestly, we've said this before, we're a little more used to cringe comedy stuff. We're used to The Office, and where they make you
Mhm.
feel uncomfortable
Yeah.
for a little while. So I think where in the 50s it might have stood out more, like, oh my gosh, this is awkward. Now we just kind of like, oh, okay, this is like a Michael Scott moment or something off of The Office. This is,
Right. But I think, like, one of the reasons cringe comedy can work with Jack, it has more to do with the fact that, yes, Jack is the sad sack, egomaniacal character that he plays, but the people around him are so insane that the two almost cancel each other out. So the
Yes.
awkwardness is about the scenario and not the character. And then this
Yes.
one, you see that the awkwardness is centered around Jack's behavior. And if you don't have Danny Kaye there, it doesn't balance out the irreverence, so to speak.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting to think, what if Jack Benny were alive today and able to do comedy? It makes you see that he could do some interesting things, like some of the modern comedians who do play in that cringe field, and he could
All you
do
need
a
is
lot in that he
an
couldn't do
episode
back
with
in
the
the day.
Colemans.
What was that?
Yeah.
Any episode with the Colemans
Yeah.
is
Yes.
so cringe. That is
Yes.
And
that
that's,
would play really well to today's audiences, and he can go even further.
But I truly agree with you, Zach, that I think having a Van Johnson is a real wasted opportunity here.
Mhm. Oh, she froze again.
Again, a wasted opportunity. Totally agree with that. And
He doesn't have the advantage they used him to. So funny was when when it was actually planned to have Humphrey Bogart play Jack
yeah.
Benny.
Yes.
And so the idea of Danny Kaye being at least different and odd. So I think that the more this can work, you need the opposite of Jack Benny.
Yes.
You need somebody antagonizing him. But I will say, like, one thing
Price would have been great.
yeah, I will say that, yeah, that would be great. The one thing I will say about it, though, because you're watching him engage in that cringe humor because it's Van Johnson there, it does make me realize Jack would have been good in a Wes Anderson movie, because Wes Anderson antagonists or protagonists do tend to have a streak of unlikability, whether it's Gene Hackman in The Royal Tenenbaums or Bill Murray in Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, there's always something about that character that's despicable, but to the point of likability. And I think Jack could have towed that line very interestingly. It's like the most recent Anderson film, Asteroid City, has Tom Hanks playing very much against his normal type. He's playing a very crappy grandpa, but he balances in a way where I'm like, Jack could have been slotted into that and would have played it very, very very responsibly and perfectly.
Yeah.
But again, it's not a total loss. Like, again, that fencing bit's freaking funny to me. Like, I really do enjoy that bit.
Well, to all of a sudden see Eddie dressed up in the whole outfit and everything is great.
Yeah, and the Jack Benny television show for me always works best when it lives up to the cartoon that's inside my head when listening to Jack.
Yeah.
All right. So
I like the
brought it up-
absurdist.
Since you brought it up, I've got to talk about the fencing bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was nobody bothered by the fact that they used a stuntman?
No.
Use a stuntman for who? for Eddie.
For Eddie Anderson.
For Eddie, because there's definitely a maneuver there that he probably couldn't have done at his age.
I didn't. Let me put it this way: I didn't even notice it. So there you go. It didn't bother me.
Interesting.
Kathy,
it
did
really
you
took
notice
me,
that
as they say, it really took me out of the moment.
I will say though, even though you're being fooled by it, if the character is Rochester, so to speak, the intent works for me. But yeah, of course,
the intent. But then I go, the real Rochester could not have accomplished that.
Not at that age, no.
At his,
and the actor playing the baker, you could see someone's face through the mask, but they deliberately hid whoever was playing Rochester. You couldn't see that person's face.
It makes me wonder if they were going to do a mask for Rochester and then thought, oh well.
And they would have removed, at the end, when Jack said take that off, they would have removed it, so you would have seen that it was Eddie Anderson, right. Which they could have done if they did a cutaway, since it was a filmed episode.
Yeah,
but they didn't. It really irritated me.
Okay, well, what else about this episode? Because we haven't gotten to you yet, Terry. So,
Buddy Adler has got to be the worst. Must have been the worst actor in Hollywood. I mean, he wasn't an actor; he was a producer, but he was horrible, horrible.
I was going to say the same thing that so often in the radio show they would do that. They would bring on people that were true, really who they said they were, and they would do a terrible job. But Jack would work with them, and it was kind of funny that they did a terrible job. But in television, it just doesn't work as well.
Yes, and it would have been fine on the radio. It was just awful on television.
Yeah. They get one golden moment from playing that bit in radio, and it's Mark Hellinger doing his own performance on the Horn Blows at Midnight one. Hellinger knows how to perform. He's good at it. Everybody else they get for this bit, whether it's Jack Warner or Daryl Zanuck or anybody, they end up making fun of them because of the way they're not delivering
and if they'd done that with Buddy Adler, it would have been fine. But instead, they just let him be Buddy Adler.
But the problem with television versus radio, I think, is that in radio, radio is normally live and everything. Jack would just go with it, and so he would make fun of them because they were having trouble, or he'd say, "You read that line wrong. Read that again," or you have another line, or whatever, and it would just be poking fun at them, and he would be kind of chuckling. But in a filmed episode, none of that's going to work. It might work in a live episode, maybe, but
as you've said, Daryl, on radio, Jack was effectively directing those shows.
Yeah,
here, he didn't have that opportunity. He was removed from the control of it. When we talked about that Shower of Stars episode, which was live, you could see Jack kind of controlling the action. He would put a hand on someone's arm, or interjected with Vincent Price at one point. None of that happened on this episode. He was just playing a character.
Yeah.
And even without all these other stupid critiques that I had, overall, this was a very boring episode. It was not particularly interesting writing. And it felt really wooden to me overall.
Ignore this man. I do not know him. He will not be back on our podcast.
The only thing I liked was the ending. I liked that closing.
You like the fact it got over. It's over. It's the end. I like this. So.
But it was. I mean, they did pull that off. That was funny.
Yeah,
the rest of it
were nice.
I'm sorry. Send it back. This has got to be reshot.
I feel like this is a place you can get trapped with Jack. On the one hand, he has this comedic innovation about him, and seemingly every episode we can listen to or watch is some kind of a gold. But his reuse of scripts does not always pay off.
Right.
It's very hit and miss. There are times where they're recycling a bit in the Lucky Strike years that was done in the Jello years, where I'm like, I would rather listen to the Jello one because it seems less refined, and so therefore it's a little bit more chaotic. And I do think that the curse is that the more polished you get, the easier it is to get into the show. But yet, once you start getting into the show, you'll find that very polished thing that you enjoyed the first time won't work as well the second time you listen to it, because you've already heard a more insane version of it, or even a better performed version of it. And I think television unfortunately suffers through this because it goes back to stuff Kathy's talked about in her books, which is there's a difficulty to adapt his radio show onto television with the limitations that are presented. Yeah. And even when you're filming it, you can't necessarily make everything interesting. It's the better version of this story for television is casting somebody as young Jack. That's the better story to tell on television.
Yeah. And on top of all of this, if you look at the shows in the fall of 57, this was the only one that was canned. Every other one was live, and they were some top-notch episode. Ginger Rogers was right before this, and a Christmas shopping episode is right after this. So, you know, if ever there was a lull, you know what I mean? So I could go find some reviews to see if reviewers noticed that this was after doing really well. This one was just
Kathy will also not be on my podcast.
Thank you.
It'll just be me, apparently, and maybe Zach.
And in fairness, we don't know what was going on. We don't know what the dynamics were that led them to make these decisions. And as I've said in the past, we also have to remember that at the time, people watched this differently than we're watching it all these years later. It's really easy to throw rocks at these people. You think it's so easy, you do it.
Yeah. If it's 57, also because this is 57, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is 57. They're still learning how to adapt Jack's show for filmic television.
Yeah.
Because
they're still trying to figure out television. I mean, it hasn't been around that long.
Yeah, it's really like, you know, not to flog the dead horse of truth here, but it's not until Dick Van Dyke comes around that the sitcom in any filmed or live circumstance is able to fully capture the energy you want to see out of television.
With the possible exception of I Love Lucy, which is always
well, yeah. But but I think in terms of Jack's participation in this, I think the frustrating part of them trying to adapt this is that you can see that they're still fine-tuning it, and it shows a lot in the preceding bit before the fencing with Rochester.
I will also contribute, for what it's worth, that the version we're able to see has been further edited, further cut down to add some more of those delightful commercials. And the version that Laura Leibowitz saw says that right after Rochester appears in fencing gear to duel with the guy, Jack leaves for the studio. Don looks around for a Lucky after breakfast and finds a series of notes to treasure hunt him to the Lucky location out the front door.
What?
So it's so this was cut out because it has to do with the commercials. So hooray, you know, it's possible that in the original version there were other tiny little things.
Right.
I love the idea of Dawn having to go on a very useless treasure hunt.
And it also says after the final commercial, Rochester is driving Jack and Mary home. Jack says he's going to do the picture himself, and the director is the parking attendant riding in the back seat. So
that was in the version we saw. That's the ending that I like.
Yeah.
So,
but given that there's stuff cut out, it's clear that maybe they had a momentum in that prior version that
I'm trying to be nice.
No, I know. Yeah, no. I mean, like, again, some of these things are butchered for one reason or another.
My question too is if they would have taken that, director supposedly, is that who that was, or studio head,
supposed to be Herman, the director of the Hornbluths.
Okay, but if they would have taken that character, not the Mel Blanc one, the one that he came
Buddy Adler.
Oh, the Buddy Adler.
Yeah, Buddy Adler. Okay. If they take Buddy Adler out and put Frank Nelson in there and spike that dialogue just a little bit more,
that would have canceled out the Van Johnson a little bit for me.
Yeah,
like that would have.
The problem was in that you had Van that they didn't give a whole lot to do.
Yeah,
and also you're going, how could Van even do a Jack Benny? It just doesn't seem like that would work. Yeah. And then on top of it, you have the flat performance by Adler that certainly Frank Nelson would have spiked up and took it to a whole other area. So I would have loved that. It's just at this time frame, the folks running the show, other than Jack, are trying to downplay a little bit how much they rely on Frank Nelson and Mel Blanc and everything, and trying to have them around a little less. And at the same time, like Kathy pointed out before, Frank Nelson is also a busy guy. He's at this point, I think they're on the Connecticut episodes probably of Lucy, where he's her neighbor at this point, and so he might not be available to Jack on a any kind of regular basis. So
there is an absolute benefit though to the existence of this in terms of how you study comedy. And I know that it's the more you talk about it, the less funny it gets, haha. But the bottom line is, if you're wanting to dissect the etymology of a joke, or a sketch per se, and you have multiple examples, it really does show you where the problems lie, and it teaches you how to hone and edit, which is what Jack's strength was. I think that the problem obviously is that it's television. They're trying some different format to pack in all the shows that they've got to do for filling a season order. But this manages to give you a good learning tool, because you can pair it up with at least maybe even the later Lucky Strike era version of this sketch, not even the 40s one that they did, where they're still like middling around grape nuts. And you can watch how a bit gets kind of not destroyed by visuals, but destroyed by pacing. And that's a kind of a cool like thing to do. It'd actually be interesting to like pair the both back to back to see and really dissect it point for point.
Well, I think something unique that I got from this discussion, and I always like when I get something out of our discussions that's unique, is we've always been talking about how the live versions versus the film versions, the live seem to have more energy and things. But I never really was thinking about it in terms of Jack, and that in the live version, I think he felt perhaps a little more like he had the freedom to be an editor slash helpful director. So like we were saying, like by grabbing somebody by the arm or touching their arm, he would indicate, oh, I have something more to say, or this is, I'm going to take this in a different direction. And so he could steer them, which would never happen on a filmed. If he did that on a filmed one, they would cut that and refilm it, because he's changing the direction, and they might have added something, but it would have been not spontaneous like Jack is in the live versions. So I think that maybe is something we get from the lives that makes them more like the radio than because I think we get a more interactive Jack than we do a placed Jack in the film versions are more like Jack in a movie. And Jack in a movie has never been as successful as Jack on his radio show, right?
And the other thing that we miss from the live version is the genuine laughter, where Jack is able to milk that and able to make the brilliant the master of timing to make sure that they get the most out of the audience reaction. Well, there is no audience reaction; it's all fake.
Right.
True. Yeah.
And that's part of Jack touching the person on the arm too. It's like, hold off, let's let this laugh go for a second. Absolutely. And that's he's sharing his sense of timing with the other cast members, and he does that all the time on the radio show, but he also can do it.
I want to make it clear, in my view, Jack was not the problem with this episode.
Right.
No.
He wasn't.
No, it's the filmmaking.
But he also couldn't be the solution.
That's right.
That he can be in the live shows. If they're going great, fantastic. But if there's an issue, Jack can kind of fix it within the creating of it that he can't do on these film shows.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's something I can bring up. Don Yaup shared a very unique little LA Times piece, and I'll find the link and give it to Buck later, but it was helpful for my own research on Hollywood Review of 1929 for the book. There's an interview that he does where it's very clear that the author kind of fills in some of the more eloquent blanks on how Jack is delivering this answer, but it all seems to point to Jack's response to being filmed for Hollywood Review of 1939 the thing he misses and wants to get back to is the stage. And it has a lot to do with being able to not just interact with the audience, but to also find topicality within the moment. I wouldn't want to go so far as to say it's ad lib, but that's what he's intimating in that interview. Like, it's spontaneity that he craves. And so when you're talking about that live performance, it's something he absolutely craves. And in a lot of ways, it could be among the many reasons where by the time you get to 1945, Jack's interest in film declines for whatever reason. It might partially be because he's more comfortable with that interaction with an audience, whether it's radio, television, concert. And I think so it's something that's always kind of thrown him for a loop.
Well, and it works out well in that post Horn Blows at Midnight, film's view of Jack had changed at that point too a little bit. So
that's, the entire industry. Well, I
they weren't interested in him anymore either.
On the precipice, things changed so quickly after that. But that's neither here nor there.
We'll let it go at that, and hopefully you folks enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed it, if no one else did, and I'm sure there's other people out there that thought that it was all Eddie in the sword scenes. And I will enjoy my bliss. So there you go. See you folks next time. Thank you, everybody. Wow. Now for something very special. Kathy, what do we have now?
We've got a trailer for our upcoming episode.
Wow. John, do you like trailers?
Ooh, do I?
All right, let's see it.
Rochester, you'd be fine on my show.
But, boss...
Now, what are you going to sing at your club tonight?
Well, I was going to do an imitation of Louis Armstrong singing, I Can't Give You Anything But Love, Baby.
Well, that would be great on my show, wouldn't it, Don?
I think it'll be wonderful. Come on, Rach, let's try it here on the piano. Now, let's see, how's this for key?
I can't give you anything but love, baby. That's the only thing I really on, baby. Dream a while, scheme a while, you're divine. Happiness, and I guess all the little bit of things you always buy more tea. I like to see you looking swell, baby. Diamond bracelets, woolworth doesn't sell, baby. Till that lucky day you don't know well, baby, that I can't give you anything but love. Till that lucky day, you know darn well, baby, I can't give you anything but love.
Wait a minute. Hey, mister, what do you think that you're... Mr. Kitzel! Mr. Kitzel, don't you recognize me? I'm Jack Benny.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just came from the optometrist's office. He put drops in my eyes, and I can't see so good.
Oh, that's too bad. What's wrong with your eyes?
I happen to be colorblind.
Colorblind?
Yeah, to me, yellow is brown.
Yellow is brown.
And not only that, brown is green, and green is yellow.
Wait a minute. Let me get this. Yellow is brown, brown is green, and green is yellow.
That's my condition. And last night at dinner, this caused trouble. My brother-in-law was eating what I thought was a hot dog. So I wanted to be smart. I said, how do you like the cucumber? He said, what cucumber? I'm eating a banana.
Oh, Mr. Kitzel, you're joking.
Oh, well, I got to be stumbling along now, Mr. Benny. Could you do me a favor? Point me down the hall.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
You want to leave? Yeah. Now, Now. Right straight ahead.
Here?
That's right. That's it. Mr. Kitzel! Mr. Kitzel! Well, it's a good thing we were on the ground floor.